Great. Well, my name is Jim Katsandres, and I'm the Director of Developer Relations at the Bluetooth Special Interest Group called Bluetooth SIG. And if you were here last night, you might have heard a little bit about why Bluetooth is here. I'll go through some of that. So really, the Bluetooth Special Interest Group is a nonprofit standards body. So it's our member companies that actually create all Bluetooth devices in the world. And we have three main pillars that we do as an organization. One is we bring those members together into working groups where they create new specifications, and those become your new Bluetooth products. It becomes the new features, it becomes the new topologies and communication methods of Bluetooth. And the other thing we do is we make sure we manage the qualification process. So that makes sure that all of those Bluetooth devices work together, so they interoperate together, and that they behave as they should. And that's a key part of making sure that all of these different Bluetooth devices can work with all of your different phones and all of your different other Bluetooth devices. And the third thing we do is promotion, which is really just branding and getting out there and letting companies understand what's available for Bluetooth and how to maximize it for their own products. So Bluetooth, I mentioned yesterday, we're growing always consistently. Actually, that number is closer to 35,000 member companies, and it's about doubled in the last 5 years, and it's predicted to double again in the next 5 years. It's a diverse organization. So about 30% of all of our member companies are in the Americas, 30% are in Asia Pacific, and 30% of them are in EMEA. But it's not just about the number of members that we have. It's actually how successful they are, how they're able to ship Bluetooth products. And so in 2018, our member companies will ship about 3.9 billion devices. That works out to be about 10 million devices a day. And like I mentioned, we bring them together into working groups, and they're currently working on over 70 active specifications. So as I'm going to show you, Bluetooth is not just in the consumer space. We're in the manufacturing space, we're in smart buildings, we're in airports, we're in many different areas. And so we have specifications that are working on that. So we have hearing aid groups, we have home automation groups. We have many different working groups that are coming together to doing products. So Bluetooth, if we look at Bluetooth, most people are familiar with the first flavor of Bluetooth, and that's audio streaming. So that's streaming through, let's say, your headsets or through your Bluetooth speakers. It's point-to-point streaming. So that's one flavor of Bluetooth. The other flavor of Bluetooth is Bluetooth Low Energy. And that's really where a lot of the point-to-point communication between Bluetooth devices are. So that's your fitness and sports and health equipment. Yeah, so it's blood pressure monitors, it's your Fitbits, it's your different types of Bluetooth devices where you want to interact with it, let's say with your cell phone as an example. And that's where all the PC peripherals are as well. Then the other part, so that's point-to-point. And then the next, we call them topologies, is a one-to-many relationship. And that's actually what we call broadcasting. And that's like Bluetooth beacons. How many people have heard of Bluetooth beacons? So a few of you. So that's where you would have point of interest in a, I'll talk about a little bit more, in a museum. It's ability to find your way inside airports and buildings. And then also it's about asset tracking and item tracking within a building. And then the last category is device networks. So these are like sensor networks and Bluetooth device mesh networks. Mesh specification is our latest one. It's been out just over 1.5 years. And that allows Bluetooth devices to talk through each other. And will so that you can not only have a range of Bluetooth communication that's farther than the radio. So you can cover whole buildings, whole campuses with Bluetooth technology. So if we look at some examples in retail and healthcare, you can see that over 75% of the top 20 retailers actually deploy location services. So they have Bluetooth beacons in their stores, and that's actually to help you find what you're looking for inside this, the store as an example. And then by 2022, it's projected that 100 million Bluetooth smart healthcare devices are going to ship. So it's a very quick growing topology with mesh networking, and it's actually one of our fastest growing we've ever had. So here's just some examples. Again, you'll get the slides, but you can see that consumer wearables, there's a 28% increase in medical devices, medical grade devices over the next 5 years. So it's a growing area. Another area is enterprise Bluetooth devices, so wearables, scanners, and then also consumer robotics is another area, whether those are devices that go through and clean your gutters, or they vacuum your floors, or even mow your lawns. So some examples in, let's say, the more industrial spaces, where it's a very demanding environment for radio communication. ABB they had some motors, and they needed to be able to retrofit some sensors on there. And it was a very challenging environment because you can't just put wires everywhere. So they put in wireless sensors on it, and they were able to realize a reducing of the downtime of their equipment by 70% and extending the life of it by 30%. So a lot of predictive analytics and predicted failure. Another example is Bosch. This is supply chain. They use Bluetooth beacons. I don't know if you ever remember the mechanical little devices that would be put on a shipping container or a shipping box, and if it was dropped, or let's say it gets wet, it would indicate that there was something wrong. Well, the challenge with that is you don't know exactly where along the logistics channel where that happened. And so by enabling a Bluetooth solution, they were able to actually determine where any type of anomaly happened and what type of anomaly it was. So location services. So these are Bluetooth beacons inside smart buildings. So let's say hospitals or retail spaces. It can be point of interest, so that you can be directed to in a stadium. You could be directed towards food and different types of ticket purchase locations. In airports, they use it for finding the direction. And then also, you can actually use it to track assets. So in a hospital, you could track assets as it came into the loading dock. You could track hospital beds. You could track wheelchairs. We'll talk a little bit about, their Bluetooth is very low energy, so you don't really need that big of a battery. And now there's a lot of energy harvesting Bluetooth tags and technology, so that you don't need any battery at all. It just harvests the energy. And I'll go through a few examples of that. And then in space utilization, it was already mentioned earlier in the conference about heat mapping, what conference rooms are being used. Bluetooth sensors are being put into every office chair in some buildings to get an idea of a heat map of and better utilization of your spaces. So you can go ahead and read this when you get the slides, and it's actually more than 400 million now, but it's just a very large increase, and it's happening fairly rapidly. So if you were to look at it, over 80% of the global airports have Bluetooth tags or Bluetooth beacons in there for wayfinding and other applications within the airports. And you might interact with those with an app on your phone. And 90% of all U.S. Baseball stadiums have Bluetooth beacons in them. And so it's finding its way into a lot of different venues. Another example, and it kind of introduces lighting as a platform. The lighting companies came together, and that was what spurred one of the big use cases for Bluetooth mesh. So the idea of having LED lights and putting sensors in them and Bluetooth beacons in them, and having the ability to read Bluetooth beacons. So now you have an inexpensive Bluetooth tag or Bluetooth beacon, and you can track it, and it just communicates just with the nearest light, and it can determine where you are. Another example, I mean, like I mentioned, there's a lot of airports, but here's an example of wayfinding in Gatwick, London Airport. Van Gogh Museum, many museums are like this. If you get close to a work of art or you get close to a point of interest, and actually smart cities are doing the same thing. They're actually putting Bluetooth beacons in, and as you're walking and doing tours, it can pop up information onto your phone and or stream audio to your headsets and be able to take a guided tour around the city. Here's another example of efficient use of buildings. Bluetooth beacons, sensor networks, combination of phones, and it's all about maximizing the space and also improving people's use of those spaces. And here's kind of an interesting use for Bluetooth beacons. In the United States, the wireless carriers, so AT&T, Verizon, all the carriers are supporting and working with buildings to register their beacons. And so what this allows is if you were to call 911 with a cell phone inside a building, and let's say there was a fire in there and there was a lot of smoke, the map and the beacons in your location of the cell phone inside the building is transmitted to the 911 operators. And it's voluntary, but it actually helps. It gives them more information about where potentially someone is inside the actual building. So we'll talk a little bit about mesh. So mesh devices, again, it's a fast-growing technology. It's estimated that there'll be 520 million mesh devices by 2022, which is a little less than 4 years away. Bluetooth mesh is being adopted into control systems, like HVAC systems, monitoring systems, automation systems. And I'll tell you a little bit about how mesh works. So it actually is a mesh network is made up of nodes. So let's say each one of these lights could be a mesh node. And let's say you have a wall switch on the wall. When you turn on that light switch, it actually sends the Bluetooth signal for hundreds of feet. And that switch, it might be configured to be this room. So oh, turn on the lights in this conference room, or it might be turn on all lights, depending how you configure your switch. And it goes and it publishes that message, and then the lights listen to it. But here's the thing, it doesn't require any routers. So it can turn on thousands and thousands of lights, so whole stadiums, whole campuses of lights, and it can do it with no perceptible human delay, with no human perceptible delay. And they can turn them all on at the same time, so they don't popcorn on, they all come on at the same time. And it was designed to do that. And then without having routers, the advantage is there's no point of failure. And then it's even having a hub or internet connection is optional too, because the actual advanced commercial lighting control system, it's the newest and one of the most advanced in the world, is actually in each light. So it's actually in the Bluetooth chip in the light. So if the internet goes down, your control system still works fine. Your lighting control system works fine. Now you can optionally have a hub if you wanted and get information out of your commercial lighting system or your other mesh network and do other things or connect into let's say a wired lighting system if you want, but that's optional. And so now to get, so I mentioned, previously with Bluetooth 5.0, the distance is 4 times what it was with 4.0, and we have member companies that have Bluetooth devices that can go over 1 kilometer in distance directly with the radio. But this allows a switch to go hundreds and hundreds of feet. And then optionally, you can enable relay features on those lights, and it relays the message to another hundreds of feet. So you can see how you can get lots of distance very quickly. So I mentioned about how the the light switches work. In this example, using it for lighting and the lights. What's interesting about this is that, let's say that one of these lights fail. When you replace that light, you don't have to change anything else in your mesh network. You don't have to configure anything. You just reconfigure the new light with what the old light was configured with. So there's no routing tables. There's no healing that the routes need to happen. There's no perceptible delays. There's no impact at all with the rest of your system. And so one of the great things about Bluetooth is we're all about interoperability. So, when you buy your car, you buy your Bluetooth speakers, it's going to work with your phone, right? So you don't have to worry about which Bluetooth speaker brand you buy or which phone you have, it'll work. So what we've done is we also taken that model to Bluetooth Mesh. And what we have is mesh models. So if you're familiar with Bluetooth, there's profiles. In Mesh, there's mesh models. And what those allow you to do is have standard applications. And so I just mentioned the lighting control system. So if your lights have that model and your switches have that model, it doesn't matter which vendor it is. It doesn't matter which company you buy the light from, and it doesn't matter which light switch company you buy it from, or any other sensor that's on the network. If it's qualified as a Bluetooth Mesh product, it will work together. And so that's really a fundamental part of Bluetooth. And these models can be very simple to just on-off models, because 90% of what we have in the world you can turn off and on. The other part is it can be a control system, event-driven control system to do a complete wireless lighting system. And the thing that this does not require an IP network. So the Bluetooth network is a separate network, and you could tie it in if you wanted to, but it's not required. So you could put in a whole commercial lighting system, a whole sensor network, and never actually have to have IT involved if you don't want to. So there's an example of some of the pictures. In smart buildings, there's a lot of extra services you can add. And so this is an example of some of the applications that you can run on the Bluetooth. This is an example of lighting system. You could do the advanced lighting control, location wayfinding, asset tracking, space utilization, all within one device. So with, let's have a few slides left. With more sensors, you get more data, and we're seeing the sensors being put into chairs, office equipment for space utilization. You're also doing occupancy sensors, and you might have an occupancy sensor for your light, your HVAC, your space utilization. So the question is if you had a standard occupancy sensor, why couldn't you just use that for all of the systems? So there's some synergy there. And then sensors are becoming, right now there's a lot of retrofit sensors, wireless sensors. But as you retrofit a device with a sensor, eventually those sensors are going to get built into the device itself. And so there you need to pick a technology that you think is going to be around for a while that will be able to, you'll be able to read those sensors in your expensive piece of equipment that you might have there, like a tractor or a manufacturing piece of equipment. Now I mentioned, installing and moving wires is costly with the manufacturing example. And then with buildings, they're changing because of regulations. And so a lot of our members are using Bluetooth to actually help manage that regulation process. So putting in environmental sensors, gunshot detection sensors, emergency alerting, those type of things. I already talked about this with batteries disappearing or getting smaller. It really is kind of fascinating. If you've seen these Bluetooth tags, they can pretty much print them on a flexible paper, and the chip is tiny, and you just put them on everything. And then one of the things we're also seeing is we're seeing synergy across different topologies. So we're seeing lights that can also have speakers and microphones for virtual assistants. We're seeing, like I mentioned, mesh networks and location services, beacons, combining together, and many more. So we just had our Bluetooth World in Silicon Valley, and it was kind of interesting because we're starting to see, we're an organization, but we don't always know what our members are doing. Oftentimes they won't tell us. They want to keep their products secret until they announce. But it was great because we had NASA come. They keynoted our conference, and they showed people how the astronauts have a portable carbon dioxide sensor that they wear on the space station, and it monitors carbon dioxide because it doesn't dissipate in space. Disney talked about sensor networks. Mall of America talked about location services. Bosch Power Tools talked about connected equipment in a construction site to keep track of equipment. ARM, which is ARM is there's Intel for processors on PC, and ARM pretty much has all the processors, like all of your phones and small devices, and they talked about the Internet of Things and the synergy with Bluetooth. So I just wanted to take this time to give you an overview of Bluetooth, and really what it comes down to is trust. So if you're going to use a sensor inside a piece of equipment, and that equipment's going to be out there for 20, 30 years, you want to be able to pick a technology that's going to be around and is in complete control of its environment. And that's why a lot of companies choose Bluetooth, because our members own the radio. So they own that specification. It's not a different radio. It's not a IEEE radio. It doesn't rely on any other standards. So we can change that radio to whatever our members need for whatever area they need. And so that's very important. So then if you're going to put in, going back to the light switch, if you're going to put in 1,000 or 2,000 light switches, and then 30 or 40 years, you're going to put in new bulbs, new lights, maybe it's something newer than LED, but if both of those have a Bluetooth logo on it, it's guaranteed to work together. And that's something that we can promise because our members own all the technology from the radio all the way up to the application layer. And it's the same thing with picking a technology for equipment, for devices that are going to be around for 20, 30, 40 years. And I can't leave an IoT talk without talking about security. So Bluetooth has multiple levels of security. Mesh actually protects at the device layer, the network layer, and then each application that runs on the network. They're all use separate encryption keys. It's state-of-the-art encryption. And then it also includes an idea called area isolation. So that means, I don't know if you've ever checked into a hotel room, let's say, like a Marriott, they use Bluetooth for their locks. And when you check out, all that information is deleted. It was only there because of your key. It was your key that you actually had on your phone. And the next person, their key won't work. If you want more information or more of the statistics, you can go to our website and download our Bluetooth market update. It has tons of information, and it's all up there for free to download. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. Thank you so very much.